Welcome, everybody, to UFO Man Live. My name is Tim, or UFO Man, and tonight we got a full panel. Tonight, we're also going to introduce our brand new formal co host, Nicole Weber. Please welcome Nicole Weber to the
Hello,
panel.
everybody. Thank
Yay.
you. Yeah. Oh, and Grand Cameron here to do it. That's great.
Yeah, Grant Cameron. Grant Cameron is an
Forget
awesome
it now.
guy. I've had him on the channel one time before, but it was like 2 years ago. So, Grant Cameron is a prolific author. He is a ufologist, a public speaker, and in my opinion, one of the top UFO researchers in the field. Please welcome Grant Cameron.
Yay.
Woo! Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay, so tonight what we're going to do, guys, is if you have a question in the chat room, please type it in all caps, all capital letters, so that we can see it right away and post it on the screen and ask Grant what your question is. If we can get it in, we will. If we can't, we sincerely apologize in advance because due to the amount of people that usually come, it's difficult to get to everyone's question, but we will try our best. Our chat room hostess is Odessa. She's bottom left there. Our experiencer expert is Nancy Timms, right in the middle. Welcome, Nancy. Our panel expert of a lot of different things is Nos. Welcome, Nos.
Thank you.
And our expert in ufology also is Rod Ball. There he is down on the bottom.
Howdy.
Yeah.
So, okay, tonight we're going to ask Grant Cameron some really important questions and see if we can get deep into the phenomena. Grant, I have a question for you. In regards to the people that really don't know who you are, who might be in our chat room or watching online, could you let them know a little bit about yourself, how you got into ufology in the first place, and if you've had any close encounters of your own?
Okay. I've been in it since 1975. I had no interest in ufology. I had done a study on dying patients at a hospital at university, but no interest in UFOs. And a friend of mine who's actually now fighting for his life, and we used to drive around the city. There was a sighting that a town called Carmen, Manitoba, where there was almost nightly sightings, and they actually captured this thing jumping off the ground. We were going to go, and then we didn't go. And I said, let's instead of driving around the city, let's go and see what's going on in Carmen. And about 3 months later, they captured this thing. If you remember the story of the Nimitz, where it drops from 80,000 feet down to sea level, this happened the other way, and it was caught on film. It jumped from the ground up to about 3,000 feet in the air in 1/8 of a second. It was caught on film. And the local TV station that got it, it was all a big story, and they slowed it down frame by frame and how this thing was rotating and bouncing up and down. And it was just bizarre. And I said, come on, let's go see what they're looking at. And I went out there, and we were there for an hour. We were driving around, and we said, whatever they're looking at isn't too spectacular. I didn't know what to look for. I didn't know what people were referring to. And I said it was like buying the lottery ticket. You got a chance you're going to win, but you're not going to win. And we're not going to see anything. Everybody else will see. We're not going to see anything. And my friend said, we'll drive into town one more time. If we don't see anything, let's go home. I said, fine. It's been a total waste of time. Turn the car to go in, and this thing flies from the left to the right in front of the car. That led to 2 years of being out there almost every night or every second night. The first year, it was this big craft. And I remember the second night, one of the most important sightings I saw was the thing came at me the second night. There was a bunch of kids we'd taken out there. It was jumping around. It was called the bouncing ping pong ball. It was jumping around the sky. It was ching, 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 all over the place. And it was just like, just spectacular. And it wasn't the same object, which is what you see with now been described, that all UFO sightings are different. So it actually started as a bouncing ping pong ball. And then it sort of appeared similar to the first night I'd seen it, with this red plasma type object with this green glow on the back. And it came at me, and then it sort of flew back where it came from. And I remember it was flying away, and I thought, oh, that could be extraterrestrial. That is so weird. I actually got to see this thing. And as it was flying away, then I was thinking, like, what's it doing? It's not doing anything. And that all my life that's stayed with me, where I'd ask experience, like, what was it doing? And they go, wasn't doing anything. And it's like, and then some were wondering, like, what are they actually doing? And I couldn't figure it out. So I figured, well, I will try to figure out what somebody else knows. There's got to be somebody in the world that knows what's going on. I don't know what's going on. That's when I started looking at the Canadian government, what they knew. And I had this synchronistic experience of happening to run into a guy who was in my father's office. My father was a pilot for the Canadian government, guy who worked with the Canadian government flying saucer program, just total synchronicity. That led me to that. I studied what the Canadian government knew in the early 1950s, how the Canadian government was way ahead of everybody else. And then that led to the former president of Penn State University, the head of the military think tank, the top military think tank, who knew what was going on. We chased him around for 8 years trying to get him to talk. He told us some pretty interesting things, talking in rhymes and riddles. And then I went after the president of the United States. I was looking for Walker's files. I went to the Truman Library, and it was at the Truman Library that there was nothing. I was looking for Walker's files, and there was really nothing there. And then I said, oh, by the way, like I thought, wow, the president's the most powerful guy in the world. He's got to know what's going on here. And as I said to them, I said, hey, so what do you got on UFOs? And then they had, if you remember back in 1952, there was the overflight of Washington, D.C., and all the people were sending in telegrams telling the president, don't shoot them down, because the president had given a shoot down order. And all these telegrams are coming in. So they had the telegrams, about 20 telegrams. And I said, that's all you got? And they said, yeah, that's all we got. And I thought, this is kind of weird. And then I went to the Truman Library, or the Eisenhower Library, which was just down the road, maybe a couple hours down the road in Kansas. And I asked them, I said, what you got on UFOs? And they said, oh, I got five documents. And I said, well, how many pages you got in the library? And they said, oh, we got like 28 million pages. I'm going, something's going on here. And that's how I started this chase of trying to find out what the president knows. And I put the website up and which presidents had sightings, all the documents. I tried to track all the documents that had been written and stuff like that. And it led me down the road. And then in 2012, everything shifted, where I'm watching Colin Andrews give a lecture on crop circles. I have no interest in crop circles. Didn't want to even be in the room. I was thinking of going across the river to a library. And then I thought, well, he's a big time guy and there's a big controversy. He had said that most crop circles are a hoax. I better stay and watch this. So I sat there and I zoned out, which I call a contact modality, where you can get in the field, all the materials in the field, you can get in the field. So I zoned out. And I wasn't thinking of what was going on. And suddenly it came into my head and it said, you know, that when you're asking that question in 1975, as that thing was flying away, what's going on? It's got to do with consciousness. And it came with absolute certainty. There was no doubt in my mind. This is what it worked. And I couldn't think for 2 days. I was just, and then I made this shift away from the nuts and bolts ufology into the whole paranormal thing, music, downloads, inspiration, all this kind of stuff. And the whole consciousness aspect of ufology, which I guess is where it ends. The last book I wrote was called UFO Sky Pilots, where I first got approached after this experience in 2012. I was approached by this woman. They said, oh, you got to talk to Pam Dupuy. I said, yeah, I guess so. I thought, well, and she was the first person who told me she'd flown the craft. And I remember she was in her 70s. She was a woman, and she was telling me she's remote viewing and she's been abducted and all this sort of stuff. And it's like, oh, yeah, whatever. I've heard all this stuff before. And then she said, oh, and I was flying the craft. And I went, you're flying the craft? And I'm thinking, all I got to think about is Saudi Arabian women at that time. It's like they can't drive a car without a man in the car, and they let you fly the flying saucer. I'm thinking, come on, you think I'm stupid? I mean, I couldn't believe that she was saying this. And I said, yeah, she said, I've flown 3 different models. And I went, really? And then I said, well, how do you fly a craft? And she said, you do it with your mind. And as soon as she said that, I went, oh, that's what they wanted me to talk to her. And that's where I started this pursuit. And the last book I wrote was, these people basically all came to me, 36 people, including 747 United Airlines captain, including a retired UFO U.S. Air Force colonel, including John Ramirez from the CIA, all these people, Chris Bledsoe, people who flown the craft. And that's where I am. I'm on this trek, which is more consciousness than it is UFOs now. It's what is the actual nature of reality. And I think that's what this paranormal phenomenon is doing. It's leading us down a road with breadcrumbs, piece by piece by piece. And they're basically telling us it's not the world you think it is. It's completely different. And we're learning as we go along by this phenomena that's exposing itself.
Okay, let's take some questions from the panel. Anybody on the panel got a question?
Come on, Nicole. You know you have something.
Okay, yeah. Since you mentioned it, Nancy. Anyway, Grant, I go into that more because I there's Andrew Rollins who's in chat and he's talked about being able to or being on like a craft and how they showed him and you're saying that the shift to consciousness, like, can you go into that more on like how I guess the craft you think that consciousness, like, or what that plays in there, or how this
Okay.
whole transition happens?
Okay, so basically, you have a big debate today about AI, that you can't get AI, and you're not going to get AI through computers. What you have is what somebody told me that he had experienced years ago is bioboards. That what you do is you take biological material and you are able to produce the material. So what you have is most of this is controlled by the military. So the military basically wants to make weapons out of it. And there's an experiment. If you Google search F-22 and rat brain, you'll see an experiment that was done in 2004 at the University of Southern Florida with 20,000 neurons of a rat brain. They take the neurons of a rat brain, they put them in a little petri dish, and after about 2 or 3 days, these cells start to talk to each other, and the neurons are talking, and they're going, and then they wire it into an F-22 simulator. And they put the signal in low, and the rat brain sends the signal back, and it levels it out and side to side. And they are able to train this 20,000 neurons of a rat brain how to fly an F-22 simulator. And then they put the wind and they put all this stuff, and the thing's able to fly this plane. And that's what we're looking at. We're looking at the ability to take biological material. So almost every person on that had flown the ship all said the same thing. Basically, you go inside the craft, and a lot of them would say you can see in 360 degrees, which is what happens in out-of-body experience. You can see in 360 degrees, or near-death experience, you can see in 360 degrees. To say we can see in 360 degrees, and they're told to see it within themselves. A lot of them are told it is within you. Where do you want to go? My friend Ron Johnson said. They said to him, Ron, where would you like to go? He said, I'd like to see the Milky Way from a distance. They said, okay, Ron, it's within you. Go within yourself, imagine it. This is going to take about 1 second of intense G-force. Be prepared. And he said there was this intense G-force, and he said, looked out the window, and there was the Milky Way off in a distance, which means that's like 50 to 70,000 light years. He went in 1 second, which means there's something wrong with our idea about time and space. It's telling us that this is not the way we think it works. And a lot of people would say that. The one woman, there was 2 women taken at the same time. They were up on the ship, and they said, it's within you. Imagine where you want to go. And as soon as you can imagine it inside yourself, push the button. And this is where I start to think this may not be what people think it is. It may be all within ourselves. Like, it's the idea that there is no time and space. It's all one thing. It's a singularity. And what they're doing is teaching us to go within. It's all within ourselves, like remote viewing. You don't go anywhere. You go within your mind. It's all within your mind. So what the common thing is that everybody says the craft is alive. The craft is conscious. It's like real AI. It's conscious. It knows it's interacting with other crafts in the solar system, and that when you touch a panel, but this is the interesting thing. If you see this Lukatsky's latest interview, the guy that ran the OSAP program, he said all UFO sightings are different, and the same applies for this thing. Everybody talks about the same thing, but everybody does something different. So one person sitting in the end of a chair, they put their fingers on the end of a chair. One person touches a button. One touches on the wall. Chris Bledsoe put his hand on a beehive on a pedestal in the middle of the craft. This U.S. Air Force retired colonel put his hands on this panel. Everybody did something different, but they all did the same thing. They touched the craft. They became one with the craft, and they could think. The craft became them. They became the craft. They become one with the craft, and whatever they thought is what the craft would do. And as John Ramirez said, or these other people would say, you think where you want to go, and you are instantaneously there, which is the same as you'll talk with people with near-death experience who will say they were in the near-death experience, and they thought, where's my mother? And boom, they were at their mother. They could see a tree, and they'd see the tree, and then boom, they're at the tree. And this idea that you can instantaneously move wherever you were, and that gives the idea that the world may be this place where we can move wherever we are. And what they're doing is they're moving us up these levels to understand how does reality actually work. But yeah, on the craft there is, and that may be what it's. You talk about the grays. This may be biological beings that have been created. So it's not like they're robots. They are biological. They're made out of biological material, because biological material can be trained, it can be think, and it can tap into this system.
Okay, Grant,
Can
we
I
do
ask-
have.
I just have one backup question. Are you talking about John Ramirez, the CIA?
Yeah, he flew the craft. Same as when I asked Whitley Strieber. Whitley Strieber, after I came public, he said he'd flown the craft, and then you'd get these bizarre coincidences where I asked Whitley Strieber, like people, the first guy that cued me in on this was Jim Semivan. Jim Semivan had the beings in his room, and they said to him, "Hey, was there any telepathy?" He said, "Yeah, that was the strangest part." He said, "There was this being behind me. I don't know if it was a gray or a reptilian or a tall gray or whatever it was, but it had this guardian type thing going on about it." I went, "Guardian type thing? That's Michael Newton. That's a soul guide. That's a soul spirit guide behind him." I asked the interview, what side was on, the left side or the right side? And then I asked Whitley Strieber, because Chris Bledsoe said the same thing. Everybody started talking about this being behind them that was telling them what to do, but they didn't know if it was a human or a being. And so I asked Whitley Strieber, I said, "Hey, Whitley, did you ever have beings behind you that was telling you what to do, but you weren't allowed to see them or whatever that was behind you?" He said, "All the time." He said, "In fact, when I was going to fly the craft, there was all these lights on top of the craft." And he said, "I was sitting at the panel board and I said to myself, hey, I'd like to steal this thing." And he said, I could telepathically could hear someone behind him laughing. And this is the whole idea. So it's this complex thing where you get these crossovers, or where you get people who are actually taken in the spirit world. Ron Johnson is taken inside the spirit world. A very important story. He gets taken in the spirit world. He's with his mother. He's 3 different experiences. The third time he's with his mother, and he can see her. They're walking around, and she takes him to this building that looks like he's a Mormon guy. Looks like a Mormon temple, a small Mormon temple. And she says, "Ron, when you die, you're going to have a room in this building." And then they go into the building, and he says, "I walk in this building, and it's like 10, 100 times the size as it is outside." And I go, "Hey, like that's what the UFO people say. Is he in a UFO, or is he in a Mormon temple? What's going on?" And you see these crossovers that happen between these paranormal phenomena. And then I start to think it may be all the same thing, and they're just spinning a story around these different things. It's all the same thing. It's teaching us how does reality actually work, and it's going to be a lot less nuts and bolts than people think it is.
Okay, I got to go to Rob. Rob says he has a question.
The question I have is, when you said that the craft travels when they think something, like they take it to a tree, take it to their mother, do you think that's where the terminology comes from, where they have it there, that we're all living in a holographic simulation?
Yeah, that's where we're going. Like in terms of we're on parallel tracks. So you got quantum, this whole idea of non-locality, the entangled particle, Edgar Mitchell came up with the holographic universe theory. Everybody's moving down the same route. In 1975, if you said holographic universe, it's a simulation, it's a computer simulation, nothing's real, it's all just in your head, people think you're absolutely insane. Now you can see everyone's going down this route. We're slowly moving in this direction and realizing it's not the same. And that's why I say with Ron Johnson's story is so important. When he goes 50 or 70,000 light years in 1 second, what the paranormal phenomenon is telling you is what you got ain't right. You're missing the boat, because if it was nuts and bolts, and if there was time and space, this stuff wouldn't be happening. Because this stuff is happening, is telling you, take another look. It's not what you think it is. And even when I did psychedelics, to get in the field, I did 27 high dose psychedelic things. I wrote a book on the first one, and the other one I'll probably sometime write the second book. But what they were telling me, and I had this experience of knowing everything in the universe, which is another common thing that I follow. People, 37% or 31% of all people have had a near-death experience, and 40% of all people have had a UFO experience on board a ship will say at one point during the experience they knew the answer to everything in the universe. I've had that experience 3 times. And the whole thing is you come back and you don't remember it, but you remember, and that gives you the idea that it's all there. It's all, and it's the ability to tap into it. change your vibration, whatever it is. And that changes everything when you start seeing these people. And that's not like the thing about the building being bigger on the inside, of the craft being bigger on the inside, or the woman, 75-year-old woman flying the craft or stuff, or you can see in 360 degrees, or this kind of stuff. That's not something, if you're going to make up a UFO story, that's not something you want to put in your UFO story. It's the idea where Whitley Strieber said, the weirder it is, the more real it is. That if it's just a plain story, it may not be real, but if it's really weird like this, and you see these bizarre things that are parallels, especially the one of flying the craft, where everybody tells the same sort of story except for what they touch. It's basically the same story, and that gives a lot of validity. It's not one anecdotal story. It's 36 plus people who are telling basically the same story. And it may not be that they're flying the craft. It may be just that they're showing them this thing to get us to understand this concept that there's non-locality, there's no time and space.
Okay, I do have a question from Nos. Nos, go ahead.
Yeah, so my biggest question here is with regard to, you've clearly managed to find the pattern that's there that humanity's not ready for, right?
Yeah.
It's even the concept of self-identity, people think they are their body. Yeah. Even, no matter how wrapped up they are in the concept of a soul and everything else, they still inherently believe they are their body, and that attachment to the rules of the physical universe. And so for you, what I want to ask is if you've started putting time into how you would develop a process, not just of slapping people in the face with consciousness, but of the process of going through releasing their concepts of the physical universe more and working their way gradually.
I've thought about that quite a bit lately. What I'm about to do an interview on this. I've written a book called Crossovers, where I look at the different crossovers, like this idea where, in the spirit world, the building is bigger and this sort of stuff with the UFO. And what's happened, because I've been in it so long, what happens is that people don't make the shift rationally, analytically. What happens is you have high level people who confirm this. So before 2017, before the New York Times article, nobody believed this. You could talk to people and they would sort of roll their eyes about UFOs and stuff like that. Sure. And as soon as the New York Times said, yeah, this is for real, yeah, they have a UFO thing, everybody went, yeah, I knew that already. And what they had done, I've written 3 books or 4 books on this disclosure process, that the government has been leaking this stuff for years and years and years. What they're doing is acclimatizing you. And then what happens is the New York Times says, yeah, it's real. And everybody goes, yeah, I know. Now you can talk about UFOs and nobody rolls their eyes. But if you talk about consciousness, they still roll their eyes. They just go because the illusion is very strong. As you said, the illusion is very strong. It's very hard to break away. But what's going to happen is, I say one of the most important interviews I've ever seen is James Lukatsky does the interview with George Knapp and Jeremy Corbell. And in there, he talks to everybody's interested in the craft. He says, we got this craft. We got inside the craft. That's all people care about. The important part of the interview that he said that everybody leaves out is he said, I can confirm, and he's talking on behalf of the government. He said, I can confirm that the UAP technology is part physical and part psychic. And what you're going to get is you're going to get a situation where, for example, on the 21st or whatever, Biden is going to sign this new bill. And this bill has the UFO stuff. Now, what do you think the 50 reporters are going to ask him about when he's signing the bill? They're not going to ask him about the price of coffee pots at the Pentagon. They're going to ask him, what about the UFO thing? And if Biden or some high-level person comes forward and says, yeah, it's true, there is a consciousness, there's a psychic connection, everything shifts. The whole thing flips. It's like people are prepared. And I think that's what's going to happen. That's what Lukatsky has said. And they didn't pick up on it because they said they wanted this thing about the craft. And then they said the thing about, well, what's the inside of the craft look like? And he said, I can't talk about that. I would have to write it down and I would have to go and I would have to get it approved in order to say it. And then he sort of hinted, and then Jeremy Corbell cut him off. And he said, if you knew that, talking about the inside of the craft, everything else in the book would seem primitive. And that's the thing, is if they make public the fact that the craft is the size of a football stadium inside and it's 30 feet on the outside, or as the story that was told with the whistleblower, with that, and if this whistleblower comes forward, this is the one that Danny Sheehan talks about. So Danny Sheehan is doing the interviews for the Senate Intelligence Committee, and he talks about the one guy. He goes inside the craft. It's 30 feet on the outside. He goes inside. It's the size of a football stadium. And then he becomes all disoriented and he wants to get out of the craft. And he goes out of the craft and he thinks he's been in the craft for 2 minutes. And suddenly they tell me you've been in there for 4 hours or whatever it was. That kind of stuff gets made public. It all shit. Then the psychic thing is on the table. The whole thing about time and space is on the table. And that's those are the shifts you're going to have. It's not like anybody's going to get convinced. The president is going to say something, some high level official is going to confirm it, or the New York Times is going to come out and say, yeah, this is for real. And then it's like, oh, the New York Times said it's for real. Then it all shifts. That's the way this thing works. It's almost like if I ask people, when did gay marriage become acceptable? And everybody goes, I don't know, 20 years ago, 25 years. I don't really remember. It just happens. Nobody remembers when it happens. It just sort of moves, and everybody moves, and everybody pretends they never denied UFOs. I remember everybody was denying UFOs. You'd go on to a show and, well, I'm going to be a skeptic. I don't think there's any proof that there's UFOs. And it's like, give your head a shake. And now how many people you go on a show, they're going to say, oh, I don't think there's UFOs. I think it's nonsense. Everybody's playing the game. And now the skepticism is on the consciousness and these type of aspects.
Okay, we have a question for you from the chat room before we go over to Nancy. Will humans morph into enhanced biological beings, Grant?
Well, they're going to progress into more sophisticated, but it's like the Yossi Ronan, this experiencer, said, when we come into your world, we take on a body. We can take on any body we want. You can do the same thing. That's where we're going to be headed. And that's the whole idea where John Mack said, we always believe that there's out there. And I say the bottom line message is always the idea of separation versus oneness. There is no separation. It's all one thing. It's all alive. There are no nouns. It's all one thing. So we can change into whatever and we want, and we don't realize we're part of the equation. So we see a being and we say, oh, there was this being and it was a gray or whatever. And then you take a look at John Mack, even before he died, started looking at this, and Kit Green has said the same thing, is this idea that the being that you see may be influenced by your mindset. So if you're in doubt, you're going to see a gray. If you're sexual, and I helped the first woman to be an abductee was Nancy Tremaine, and she was big into the reptilians. And it was you read her book, it was like all about sex, and it was high energy, and she was high energy. And you see the reptilians all have this sexual aspect to it. Or if you take the people who are very religious, then they have this, the Mission Rama people, where I had the experience in 2020, where these 9 people got levitated into a portal. And I'm interviewing these people, and I've got them on camera, 3 people. And then I asked the people, like, what did the beings look like? And they said they were etheric beings. They were like energy beings. And of course, Mission Rama, they're the Roman Catholic. They're all meditating and praying, and they're trying to raise their vibration. And the beings lower their vibration. They meet him in the middle in these portals. And then I asked the one guy, how many of these beings were there? These etheric and energy type beings around you 9 people that were levitated in the air. And he said they're at Mount Shasta. And he said there were as many beings as there was trees in the forest. And so you have this thing, and Kit Green says the same thing, that you can get people in the same event. And I had it at Mount Shasta with people inside this portal, where I'd ask one, what did you experience? Oh, he was talking this weird language, and the other one was getting a message from him. Each person was having a different experience. They were all in the same place. Or the one guy, everybody saw this being, 10-foot tall being. They said, oh, it's 10 foot tall. He had this hair. He looked like a swimmer. It was all sort of like a muscular guy. In 2014, he was in the portal. They all saw him, and they said he was solid. And in 2015, they all said, oh, he looked like a hologram. You could see through him. So then there was one guy who was supposed to be in the portal. He was a translator for Paula Harris. And he was a military guy, 24 years in the Navy, and was now an architect, didn't want his name released, whatever. And I said to him, I said, hey, you were in there? I said, you saw Antarell? And he said, yeah, I saw him. And I said, so he was a hologram? He said, well, he wasn't a hologram. I said, well, everybody said he was a hologram. He said, look, I was close enough. I could see the lines in his face. He wasn't a hologram. And that's the whole thing. You see 2 people seeing 2 different events, and they're both looking. Or Colm Kelleher tells the story of being at Skinwalker Ranch, and they have these military people on there, and they all got the Gen 3 glasses, the night vision glass, and the object comes over the hill. And they all take a look with the Gen 3 glasses, and they're all watching this thing as it flies by. End of the night, they all write down what they saw. One saw a triangle, one saw a circle, and they all saw different things. And we got to realize we're part of what we're actually seeing, that it may not be something separate from us. We're part of what we're seeing. And that's where it comes to this idea. I say it's so important where Jim Lukatsky says all of the 200,000 sightings in the database, according to him, were all different. And that's critical. Is why would they all be different? Because they're all individual seeing. Every tree is different. Every snowflake is different. We are part of what we're seeing. And that's where you're going to have people will say, oh, the grays, they all look the same. And then you take a look. I defy anybody to do it. Take Betty Hill's gray. Take Whitley Strieber's gray, take Betty Andreasen's gray, start putting them beside each other. They're not even close to looking the same, but we assume that all look the same, and you start to look, and there's this aspect of individuality. It's all one thing. We're like a cell in a body. The body's alive, we're part, but we're individual, and there's an individual aspect to this that I will maintain. All alien sightings are different. All sightings are different. And the craft, that definitely all the people inside the craft touch something different. It was the same sort of story, almost like a dream, like a lucid dream. They're all having sort of a dream, or they're having an out-of-body experience, or they're having a near-death experience, but all the details are different in the experience. I think it's the same thing is going to happen in the UFO field, that we're going to learn that we are part of what we're seeing, that you got to separate yourself from this thing. There is no sort of out there that's influencing us, and we're part of what we're seeing.
Hey, Grant, we got some questions for you, but before I go to Rob, I need to go to Nancy. Nancy, do you have a question?
Yeah, I'd like to know what is in place once the government gives their disclosure. What is in place to help humanity with this?
Well, that's where I fear there may not be the disclosure people want, because as I say, this thing is written into law. This is run by the military. They are not going to release Lockheed Skunk Works or Lockheed Martin is the market cap is $110 billion. They are not going to drop this thing. We do this kumbaya thing. I think you listen more to Danny Sheehan, who says that the people who control this thing want this full spectrum dominance over the world. There's going to be a one world government run by the United States of America, and anybody who steps up and tries to influence in economically or militarily, we're going to put them down. This is the disclosure. So the disclosure I think you're going to get is what you're getting right now. It's going to be yes, what Obama said. Yes, these things are real. We've got photographs of this thing, but we don't know what's going on. Everybody says, "Oh, they're lying. He's just lying." And I keep going. They're all saying the same thing. I don't think they know what it is. I think that they have maybe some ideas. It's got consciousness, all this sort of stuff. But because you've got bodies and crafts doesn't mean you know where it came from. And Jim Simmons at the briefing said this whole thing. People say, "Oh, we just got to we got one piece to put together. We got to connect the dots. That's all we got to do." He says, "I'm not sure there's any dots. There does not appear to be any there. This is a guy that had the beings in his room, who has talked to all the high-level people, who got the briefing, whatever the briefing was, and he's basically saying, I don't think I'm ever going to see the results of this thing. So I think they know a lot less than what they're claiming they know, and the whole idea is to turn this thing into some sort of weapon. So the disclosure is going to be a lot less than people think it is. It's going to be, yeah, this thing's for real. We don't know what it is, because in the end, they may not know what it is. The idea that they can, create a craft that's the size of a football field inside. I don't believe they have that technology. I don't believe that the consciousness technology. If you look at the war in Ukraine, we basically have World War I trench technology. Like, where's the secret technology? If you got the secret technology, what's going on in Ukraine? Why can't we use it? I mean, or the Afghan. The Afghans were camel jockeys running around. We lost the war to the Afghans. Like, what happened to the secret technology? It's like I don't think we have it. I don't think we understand where there's a lot of military bravado that, maybe Doty's putting out that we've got this kind of stuff and we've got it all figured out. I don't think we have it figured out. And so I think that it's going to be a few steps at a time, but the military is not going to allow this, because they're trying to turn this thing into weapons, or everybody's trying to get a patent on this kind of stuff. And the one thing I do think, and I've talked about this quite a bit, when you look at the anti-gravity stuff, because I've worked on all this stuff for years, I've chased it. Every time I went after anti-gravity or this kind of stuff, it all ended up with a dead end. And the prime example of that is Hal Puthoff, Kit Green, and Brendan Fugel, who runs Skinwalker Ranch with all the money, financed an experiment by Joe Firmage. This only was about 3-4 years ago. And in that experiment, they had these gyros, opposite spinning gyros. And they were trying to levitate this object off. It was called the bouncing box. And it was on a table, and they were trying to levitate this thing off the table. It did not get 1 inch off the table. And I look at that, and that was Brendan Fugel with a lot of money, and Kit Green, and Hal Puthoff, and all these high-level guys, and they couldn't levitate that thing off 1 inch off the table. They ain't got nothing. And
Grant?
what they do have is portal technology. And if you want to, I say they've probably got portal technology. That's what it's about. That's what John Alexander said. It's not about the UFOs. It's about the portals. That's what he told
Right.
Sid Goldberg in the parking lot after his interview. He got upset. He said, it's not about the UFOs. It's about the portals. I say the same thing. There is portal technology. They've got it. I've actually put out the video of Ron Pandolfi from the CIA, 1983 in the CIA, the guy who says he's got the keys to the briefing when the senators want a briefing. He's got the keys, and he tells them, I can give you the keys, but you'll be in trouble. Let me hold the keys. And they say, yeah, you can hold the keys. He said at one point, we got it on camera. He's on a cruise ship. He doesn't realize this is ever going to go public. He says, people have always wondered what it's like to go into the next world. As soon as John, he's talking to his friend is sitting beside him, went to university with him. He said, next time John goes to the desert, a number of us here are going to go into the next world and come back again. I got that video. I made it public, and he was furious. Like, Cameron stole the video. And it's like, absolute. This is a guy who didn't realize this was going to go on camera and he was going to get it. Portal technology, I believe, is real. And I can tell you something that will confirm this is the real deal. This is the technology. It's the ability to move from here to there. It's not, we're going to go faster than light.
All right, Grant, we have a question from Rob. Rob?
Yeah, it's actually something you said a few minutes ago. It took a while to get the question. The question I have is, with the current level that the government, current level of information the government is releasing to the public about UFOs and all the stuff that you see on TV, when, in your opinion, do you think final disclosure will happen, either in the United States government or, say, in another government, United Nations? When will they finally say something that is tangible, believable, we can see it, like that type of stuff?
Well, they already have. I mean, Obama's on the record. A bunch of them are on the record as saying, yes, this is for real. We're studying this stuff. Even Biden said, yeah, they've got this panel and they're studying it. So, yeah, they've confirmed that UFOs are real. But that's where the question comes. What do they know beyond that?
Right.
Do they know it's extraterrestrial? Do they know it's interdimensional? I don't think they really understand that kind of stuff. And it's a card game. So people are saying, well, we got to do it before the Chinese. There's no way the Chinese are putting the cards on the table. There's no way the Russians are putting it. In fact, we are damaging the whole thing. That's why I say, that's what Walker said. You have no need to know. It's just curiosity. That's all you want. You want curiosity. And I tell the story that when in 1989 we did our first book on disclosure, and that was when the whole deal was going on with Bob Lazar. We did the Bob Lazar story as it was happening, and Bob Lazar, there's a story that a lot of people don't know, that Bob Lazar was issued a gun. They gave him a gun and they said, you got to put a $500 deposit in case you lose this gun. And he said, I'm like, this gun ain't worth $500. He says, I've got an Uzi. I'll carry my own gun. And they made this arrangement that EG&G allowed him to carry his own gun. So he carried an Uzi. Now, why did they issue him a gun? Because they said that the Russians were going to try to kidnap somebody from Area 51 from this program that they'd gotten inside.
Wow, really?
And Lukatsky had said, if you listen to the Lukatsky interview, he said they didn't get inside the CIA, but I believe that the OSAP program, the Russians got inside the OSAP program. So you got a situation where Putin at that time was he was a colonel in the Communist Party KGB. He was in East Germany. He was a foreign agent with the KGB. The KGB was trying to kidnap, and there's this story, I can't remember what the number was. It was some bizarre number. How many Russian spies there was in Las Vegas compared to the number of people at Area 51? Massive number. They know where it is. So what I said is, if they release this thing, if they actually identify who's working on where are the crafts, who's working on the crafts, you got a lot of trouble. You're going to have to issue everybody a gun, because everybody, it's like you put all these people's addresses. This guy's working on it. Suddenly their phones are tapped. The Russian satellites are going wherever they're going. There's no way the Russians are going to put their cards on the table. There's no way the Americans are going to put their cards on the table. because it's a game of chicken. And what's going to happen now? That's why they're trying to stop this thing, is because if we put our cards on the table and we identify what we know, the Russians are going to go, "Oh, thank you very much. That's the piece we needed." They're trying to figure it out.
Exactly.
Pieces, and then until you put all the pieces, you're not going to put your pieces on the table.
Right. It's no one wants to put their pieces on the table because the other guy's going to say, "Well, I need this. You give me this," and it'll start a whole war over, "I want this, and you're not getting it."
So the problem is that are we going to out the program? Are we going to out where the crafts are? Who's working on the crafts? I think that the military is going to do everything in their power to stop this, and because it's all at stake, and that's why I say this is legal. I believe that the Gang of Eight. So you have the head of the intelligence committees in both, and the head of the House leader and the Senate leader, and these 8 people who are briefed know that this program's real. That's why people are saying, "Oh, it's this rogue thing and it's illegal," and stuff. It is not illegal. They played this. That's why I keep saying, how did they get the crafts? I actually posted the document. If you go back in 1960s, 70s, Clifford Stone got these documents. They were called the moon dust documents. There was a big thing back in the time. All these moon dust documents. They were recovering Russian nose cones, and they were recovering pieces of flying saucers. And the Kecksburg thing crash in 1965. Oh, that was moon dust. There was a moon dust document about that. That's what they're doing. And there's an actual document that said anything that falls on American territory is controlled by the National Aeronautics Space Administration. Everything. They have eminent control. So the question I said is, how did the contractors get the crafts? They were given the crafts. Half the U.S. government is contracted out. They gave it to them because if you're a senator, what do you know about UFOs, about back engineering? You don't. So you give it to Lockheed, and you give it to all these companies, and you say, work on it. And now it's like you're a presidential lawyer. Now they're going to throw you under the bus and throw you in jail. I mean, it's like these guys have a legal agreement to have these crafts. And the Gang of Eight know. And the reason I know that the Gang of Eight know is because what happened in the OSAP program? There's this famous letter that Harry Reid sends in 2009. The program, he wants the program that inside the Pentagon. They're trying to kill this program. The OSAP program runs from 2008 to 2010. 2009, they're trying to kill a program. So he's trying to hide the program. So what does Harry Reid do? He's the disclosure guy. What does he do? He tries to get it into a waived, unacknowledged special access program with a limited bigot list. Exactly what all these programs are. He was trying to hide the program the same as everybody else. He was trying to put it in the black world. These things are in the black world. They're legal. They're very just highly compartmentalized. And if you listen to the Katsky interview, that's exactly what he said. He's not lying. He said, he was running the program. He said, I did not see anything illegal, but I did see very highly classified material. The Canadians, 1950, the Canadians wrote a top secret memo that said flying saucers exist. We were told by American officials that flying saucers exist. It's the most highly classified subject in the United States. So if it's the most highly classified subject, if we release it, then we release all the secrets, which I'm good with. But if it's the most highly classified secret, you can bet that there are 20 levels of security, and anything that's you got to get down below. And what you have now is you have a situation where you have the contractors are trying to stop it. The Secretary of Defense doesn't want it out because they all know it's legal. They don't want this part out. So it's like leak out the fact that UFOs exist. They were working on this and this sort of stuff. But this bottom level of the fact that we gave these crafts to these people, we financed this stuff. They didn't steal the money. They didn't do all this kind of. We give them the money. We allowed them to do it, and now it's starting to get exposed. And we can't expose the fact that we knew this all along, that they wrote this into law. And once it's in law, you know what the U.S. government is like. Once it's in law, that's what Eisenhower warned. He said, beware the military-industrial congressional complex. They took the word congressional out of the speech. That's what's going on now. Everybody's got their hand in the cookie jar. You have the F-35 jet fighter way over budget. F-35 jet fighter is made in 48 different states and in 10 different countries. The reason it's done is to compromise everybody. Every senator's got jobs. Nobody's going to go against it. And everybody's got their hand in the cookie jar. Everybody's got the jobs. And you can't break that cycle. Very hard to break the cycle of anything inside the government.
Hey, Grant, we do have a couple of questions. One question that has been waiting to be answered is, does Canada have a similar Skinwalker Ranch phenomenon going on up there?
No, not that I'm aware of. I mean, there's a lot of rumors. No, nothing to that effect. my idea of the whole thing, Skinwalker Ranch. Ron Johnson is a guy that if you haven't had him on, he's a pretty sick guy, but he's got one of the most unbelievable stories. He lives just outside Area 50, at Skinwalker Ranch, and this is whole idea about we are part of what we're having phenomena. So we have this idea of the illusion says there's them out there, and then there's here, and we got a separation, and it's like no, we're all part of the same thing. So the thing is, why does Skinwalker Ranch have this phenomena? And Ron Johnson actually gave me photographs, really wild photographs. I showed him at the Newfound conference this year of shadow people. And this is outside area of Skinwalker Ranch. This is a ranch beside there owned by a Martinez guy. And the bizarre photographs. And you have that whole ranch and the whole valley. And so I'm looking at why could this possibly happen? And you see that this thing goes back into the last century. And it's like we're part of this phenomenon. So what you have is you have the one story that may have part of it is you have the Utes and the Navajo, and they're putting curses on each other. And if you can build a physical building, you can build a spiritual building in the spiritual world. It's just you do it. So you can create this. Like if you commit suicide, somebody commits suicide, that building will be haunted. That they're going to leave that bad energy there. And you have that. Plus the other thing that I say is you take a look at the Utes. I look back at the Utes. And if you take a look, when the Mormons came there in 1847, there was, I think, 23,000 Utes. If you look after the Civil War, there's only like 9,000 left. And these people were basically moved off their land and massacred. You take all that kind of violence, and you take all that kind of stuff. That may be why this whole valley has these bizarre phenomena going on, because we've created this, and we have this idea that it's just happening. And there's certain rocks. If you get certain rocks, well, they're interested in certain rocks. We are part of the phenomena that we are experiencing, and
Right.
That's what I think is happening there. And the phenomena operates through there, but it is Skinwalker is very bizarre in terms of what they saw, and that's what you see the government looking at. The government, I show a document. I did a book on apports, which is one of the main things they wanted to look at Skinwalker Ranch was the apports, putting bulls inside the trailer, putting the groceries back in the bag when the woman took the groceries out, all these different things appearing, disappearing, and all that kind of stuff. Right. That's what they were interested in is militarily. They actually have a document, and I put it in the apport book, where it says, if we could perfect the apport technology, 1974, this is already. If we could apport the technology of putting things through walls, which is what happens in abduction, we could go into the enemy, go into the vault, get the documents, bring them back to Washington, photocopy them, go back, put them in the vault, and they'd never even know we were there. So they've been working on this support technology. That's why they went to Skinwalker Ranch. They weren't interested in UFOs. Even Jacques Vallée said when he first got there in 1996, 1997, he wrote in his diary, he said, what are we doing? What are we doing looking for UFOs? They were wasting our time at Skinwalker Ranch. There's no UFOs here. And there really was no UFOs. It was all this other weird stuff that they were seeing. What they were trying to do is, how do you put stuff through walls? How do you make stuff disappear? How do you mutilate a cattle when something isn't there? Because if we could do this to the Russians, how do you get in someone's head when these three military guys, special op guys, when this voice came in their head and said, leave, you are not welcome. They go, how the hell did they do that? Boy, if we could do that, we'd just be able to go to Putin, go in Putin's head and talk in Putin's head. That's what they're looking for. And so that kind of phenomenon, but we're part of the phenomenon. I think we created that by things that we did in the past. We created this phenomena, almost like the perfect example is if somebody commits suicide, you're going to have this energy in a building.
Right. Residual. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hey, Grant, we have a question from Nicole Weber. Nicole, you're muted.
Oh yeah, no, go a little bit more into like this. I guess you call it teleport or
Apporting.
Apporting. Because how does that work? Because a lot of us are experiencers on here. Like I'm curious as to how they do
Isn't it kind of like transmedium technology in a way, because they're able to move through different types of objects, like walls and ceilings and windows and whatnot?
Well, what you start to see, this is my next book, is going to be called Crossovers, where you see crossovers and other phenomena. So you say, oh, apports is happening at Skinwalker Ranch, all these bizarre things. But then you start looking and you go, no, it happens in physical mediumship as well. When you go to a seance, it happens there. It happens with psychics. It happens with experiencers. I remember the one experience, I always ask that question. Hey, you had your experience? Yeah. did you ever have something fly around the room or something disappear or reappear? And they go, yeah, can you hang on a second? And they go into the next room. They come back with this collection of stuff that has been appeared, and they found this stuff, and it's all synchronistic, or their cigarettes were hidden and their lighter was lit, and you start to realize it's all across the phenomena. It's all the same thing, and so the phenomena is there. We're able to access it. And experiencers can access it because they're vibrating at a different level. And that's what I think is going on. So psychedelics, what you're doing is you're changing your vibration. It's all one thing. It's the whole idea that there's an Akashic field, there's a record or whatever, or even Gary Nolan, if you've followed Gary Nolan. Gary Nolan made this statement. And because I had the downloads, I knew about this. And I actually even asked Tim Taylor, who's the famous guy from American Cosmic, where he gets this invention where it's part of the company that sells for $100 million on NASDAQ. And the beings are giving him these inventions, these medical inventions, stuff like that. I talked to him, but I talked to Gary Nolan because Gary Nolan had said at one point, he said, I don't know how it works. He says, I don't know if it's little L's in your head or what's going on. He says, but I know how to make it work. And I said, can I quote you on that? Can you tell me how that works? Because I knew. And he said, well, he says, yeah. He says, what I do is I take the problem and it's like an FBI thing. And I put them up on a table, put little strings between them. And he laughs and he puts little strings between them. I ask all the questions and then I leave it. And he'll put the paper beside the bed. He says, I'll leave it. And within a couple of days, the answer pops into my head. And that's this whole idea is experiencers. The reason that they're interested in experiencers, there's even one, I think comes from Ron Pandolfi. The statement was, because we cannot control the phenomena, we watch those who the phenomena affects. We have no other choice. And that's why people will say, like, I remember Bette Andreasen, her husband was really upset. She said, this is terrible. They're watching me. They're on the computer. And I said, really? And he said, yeah, I'm just fed up. I filed FOIs and I'm trying to stop this. And I said, hey, does your wife get downloads of how the craft flies? She said, oh yeah, absolutely. She draws all these diagrams. I said, well, are you surprised they're in your computer? Of course. If you're the experiencer, how do you think the CIA gets their intelligence? It doesn't fall out of the sky. They watch people. They try to figure it. And that's what Chris Bledsoe said to Tim Taylor. He said, why are you on my property? He said, you got all these intelligence and military people. My kids are petrified. They think the government's going to whack them and all this sort of stuff. And he said, why are you on my property? And then Tim Taylor says, well, Chris, he says, it appears they like you. He says, and they're talking to you. They don't like us. They don't talk to us. So we've come to find out, what are they telling you? And that's the whole thing. That's why they're on his property. And it makes sense. And I do the same thing. That's why I went to the Canadian government. That's why I went to the President of the United States. That's why I chased Dr. Eric Walker. You find somebody who knows. And that's why I say the key to this whole UFO thing, forget about what the government knows. Forget about what the government releases. Go to the experiencers. They're the ones that are interacting with the intelligence. You cannot figure out anything until you talk to somebody. The government is not talking to the intelligence. Although I did get, I don't know if I will leak this, but I did get something that in 1975, my friend was Bob Emenegger, who wrote a documentary called UFOs, Past, Present, and Future. Most of the stuff was leaked to him by the CIA, by the military, by Nixon himself. Two of the things they leaked were contact stuff. One was the channeling of the alien called Alpha. And Alpha said, I'm from Uranus. And Alpha said, on Uranus, we got half a billion people, 500 million people. Uranus is like 324 below zero. And I remember the guy, the Canadian guy, it was the metallurgist who was doing the channeling there. Navy intelligence channeled it. CIA channeled it. The Canadians were channeling this alien. And the one guy said, let me make something clear, Grant. He said it was from Uranus. At no time did we ever believe this thing was from Uranus. And the thing was, so they leaked that story. In 1959, the guy learns to channel from this woman in Maine. He goes to the CIA, to the National Photographic Interpretation Center, where they analyze all the spy photographs. Arthur Lundahl, who runs it, runs the weird desk at the CIA on UFOs and paranormal phenomena, sits him down and says, okay, let's channel. And the UFO was flying by the window. They leaked that story to Bob Emenegger. And Bob says to Lundahl from the CIA, he says, well, can you go on camera and tell the story? And he says, no, I can't go on camera. And he said, well, why not? He says, I'm on duty. I can't go on camera. So they get Robert Friend to tell the story. So they leaked this story, plus the Holloman Air Force Base story, which I have got enough confirmation. I can tell you the Holloman Air Force Base story is true. They had 4 cameras. This is 1971. The UFO lands at Holloman Air Force Base. The beings get out. This thing is all filmed. And so you have these 2 contact stories. in this documentary where the government leaks this fact that we have some contact with the beings. I've now seen, I can't really get into it because the guy said not talk about it, but I've now seen evidence again of an official move from one of the departments where you never figure inside the American government on contact. It looks like they're trying to make contact, or they're trying to compare their contact with contact on the outside. The experiencers are the important ones. They're the ones that have the answers. When you start comparing their stuff, then you realize, because they can actually ask questions. That's why I said to the people, I'd say, ask him if there's an alien. Next time you see him, ask him if he's an alien, and questions like this. And you get these things, or you get these things where people say the craft is bigger, or the 360 degrees. And you start combining these things, and you realize these people are telling you not so much who cares about their story, but you're more interested in when somebody says they can see in 360 degrees, and you realize that happens in out-of-body experience, and that happens in near-death experience. You start to realize, hey, how does the world actually work? It's giving you an idea of how reality works. And the story may be, everybody's seeing different stories. Everybody's got different crafts, different things that they're told and stuff like that. But the bottom line is they're leaking it's almost like the intelligence is leaking this stuff to us, these little breadcrumbs, where they allow you to see this kind of stuff. And when you put them together, you suddenly realize, like, why are people all, why are they allowing people to fly the craft? Like Ron Johnson said, they told me that was my role in life, but he's only flown the craft one time. Everybody only gets to fly the craft one time, which is another pattern. You see this, like if you're going to make up the story, somebody say I've flown it like 100 times. Everybody only flies it one. Well, no, the 747 United Airlines guy had twice, and they all say the same thing. They said, even the guy who was the U.S. Air Force retired colonel. I was at Orange County lecturing there, and he was not the lecturer. He came later, and then he said, "Hey, Robert, Grant was talking about flying the craft. Tell me your story." And I go, "Hey, you flew the craft?" He said, "Yeah." And they said, "Hey, Robert, tell me who you are." He said, "Oh, I'm a pilot." I said, "Oh yeah, my father's a pilot. My son's a pilot. Who do you fly?" He said, "Oh, I flew this. He said, "I flew F-16." He said, "You flew F-16s?" And I said, "Sit down, tell me your story." And then he said what almost all of them say. He said, "Yeah, I know. I think it seems like a dream." I said, "Everybody thinks it's a dream. Just sit down and tell me your story." The guy that was the 747 United Airlines pilot told the story to one of the Rama guys. He told him the story, and then a year later he said, "I had that dream again." And then the guy said, "I think it's time for you to tell your story." But he thought it was a dream 2 years. But the second time he had the same story of flying the craft. And that's the thing. You see these patterns that the experiencers are the ones we're going to listen to. But the government, I don't think, is really dealing so much with the experiencers. They're sort of getting little bits and pieces or whatever. But they're working on weapons. But it's experiencers, I think, are the key people in terms of them putting their stories down. And when you start comparing the stories, you start to realize that they're telling us how reality actually works. That's what they're doing. They're not really here to get anything. Like there's no, I always say there's no capitalism in an alien. They don't have any chandeliers. They don't have any leather furniture. They don't eat. They don't drink. They don't breathe. They don't do anything. They have nothing. I mean, they don't have jewelry. It's like they're here to steal our gold. Like they don't have jewelry. Like they're not interested in anything. And so why are they here? What are they doing? And what it is this gradual, it's almost like it's us. Experiencers will tell you, that's my family. And you start to hear that enough times and you go, hey, maybe there's some truth to that we are them, they are us, and it's all one thing, and it's all this play. Because when you die, I always say, people, when you come to real reality, when you die, you float away from your body and you look back and you say, oh my God, I was a puppet. I was the puppet master. I thought I was the real thing. I'm not. And then when you go in, it was like a dream. And then when you go into your next life, this puppet life will become a forgotten dream. You won't even remember it. It's like this play where we're learning stuff and we're going from life to life and stuff. And when you talk to the experiencers, you see 25% are talked to about reincarnation. 80% have out-of-body experience have out-of-body experiences. 37% have had near-death experiences. 40% say they knew the answer to everything in the universe. When you start to see these patterns, you realize these people are being told very important things about how reality works.
Right, but the government doesn't seem like they really want to address the truth from the experiencers because
again, you have to go, who's the government? Who are you talking about the government? The government doesn't know anything. It'll be some contractors, very deep level contractors that may know. There may be the president may be read in terms of what does John Ramirez call it? the existence of or something like that, and don't ask any questions because it gives you plausible deniability and stuff like that, and we really don't know what's going on. But the government, everybody always refers to the government, but I don't think that it's the military. It's down deep in this. One guy said, what was his name? He was the lawyer for the Senate Appropriations Committee when the Lazar thing was going on. Because what happened in the Lazar thing is the Appropriations Committee in Senate is the ones that hand out the money. And when the Lazar thing broke in 1989, Byrd, who was big into UFOs, that ran the Appropriations Committee, said to his colleagues on the Appropriations Committee, said, "Hey, are we doing UFOs at Area 51?" And they go, "I don't know, sir." And he goes, "Well, hell, man, if we're doing UFOs, we're paying for it, and we don't know what's going on." So they send this guy, Dick D'Amato. They send Dick D'Amato, and he goes to talk to everybody. He talks to Friedman. He goes on and he talks to this guy that said there was a live alien there, that George Knapp is now talking about, this O'Donnell guy. And then O'Donnell says to him, he says, "I'm not going to talk." And he says, "I'm not going to talk unless my boss says I can talk." And he says, "Okay." So he goes to the boss, and the boss says, "I don't care if he talks. 40 years ago, I don't care. He can say what he wants to say." And then he goes back and he says, "No, I'm not going to talk." And so this O'Donnell guy never confirmed that there was a live alien there. And so he goes back, and that's when he tells the story to Jesse Marcel Jr. He says to Jesse, he says, "Hey, Jesse, I want to have a meeting with you. I want to, and this committee room. It's a top secret committee room with the codes on it and below the Capitol." And he says, "I'd like to talk to you." And Jesse Marcel says, "Well," he said, "I've talked about Roswell." He said, "There's nothing more I can tell you about Roswell. I've said everything." He says, "Well, maybe I'd like to tell you something." So they go into this room, which is where the aliens supposedly were in 1947. I have this story of these two 80-year-old women. They're telling me this story about their father tells them this story about the Senate. Roosevelt's Secretary of State shows them these bodies in the sub-basement of the Capitol. Well, they go to the sub-basement of the Capitol, and now it's this big conference room, and it's got the secure locks on it, and they go in, and D'Amato sits down, and Jesse Marcel sits down, and the book, Majestic, the whole Majestic 12 thing, Roswell is sitting there, and he taps the book. And he says, "Jesse, I just want to let you know," he's tapping the Majestic book, "I want to let you know this is for real." And Jesse says, "Well, I know it's for real." He says, "So when are you going to tell the people?" And he said, "Well, if it was up to me, I would have told the people yesterday." This is not up to me. I'm just here to determine how much the security is costing. And he said, he was furious. He said, "There's just this group. They're unelected. They have all the money. They have all the power. And that's what you have to look at, is there's this group that have been given permission." So I don't think it's a rogue group. I think they've got permission. They've been given this very high level security that they've had since 1947 that said this is the most highly classified secret, as they told the Canadians, most highly classified secret. And they've got it levels and levels and levels where there's only a couple of people that know. And so the government really doesn't know what's going on.
Okay, well, I want to address a question from Odessa and from Nos at the same time.
Okay.
So
go ahead, Nos and Odessa. One of you, go ahead.
Yeah, Odessa, go ahead.
No, you can't put it on me. All I've been asking is what's been in the chat. So it's not actually my particular question. So Nos.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I actually had a thought to share with the panel and the audience here. As far as the DoD is concerned, everyone that works in the legislature and the president's office are temp workers. The people in the DoD that have access to any of the information about this are lifers, right?
That's the way
they're trying to make determinations as to what information is going out. And anyone anywhere in the world that's been watching what's happened with our Congress and Senate over the last dozen years knows these are not people that have the ability to control themselves. And giving them access to the most sensitive information that humanity has available to them is a bad idea, right? So these people in the DoD and the contractors and the money that goes behind all of that is saying these people can't be trusted with the information, and we're just going to have to try to find a different way to go about it.
Okay, well, that's what Walker was telling us.
Yeah, and they're not going to release anything about consciousness whatsoever because of the counter military concerns. You know, as long as they keep the conversation about nuts and bolts machines or potentially having some sort of ambassadorial contact with others, then that's what they're trying to make sure that their competing nations think that it's about. But if they come out with the information about consciousness and they actually acknowledge that, then they've just released the seeds of a technology they cannot control and prevent anyone else from developing. And anyone that wants to pursue that path, whatever country they may be, may very well be able to get over on the United States, which is built on destruction.
Right.
Everyone else really has a better shot at achieving consciousness.
I want to say something really quick to the chat room. We're trying to get to all of your questions, but because you have so many questions and they're very good ones, I will highlight them. If I can't get to them, I apologize in advance. We're doing our best. Odessa has a question. Why do aliens only abduct basic humans and no one of higher powers that can make a more significant movement in society? They want to make a statement. Why abduct John Doe and not Elon Musk or someone like that?
That's the impression people want to have. They took the head of the United Nations. There's a story that they got Bill Clinton during, if you follow Yvonne Smith and her stuff. I think they've gotten, you take Jim Semivan, who was ran not foreign or whatever, high level GS-17 or whatever at the CIA. They got him. They got John Ramirez, high level CIA. Kit Green is part of a program where if you're a high level general or something and you have some bizarre UFO experience, they send you to Kit Green. Kit Green determines, if the Russians got you, are you crazy or have you been abducted? So they know. I mean, you're not going to hear a lot of these high level people are going to come forward, but there are a lot of high level people. There was the one guy ran a country. He was a grand chess master in one of the Eastern European countries. They got him. I think that's sort of an illusion that they're just taking low level people. They're taking people that can influence it. And people will say, or I'll say, people will always get mad about the abduction. I said, just remember one thing. Jim Semivan had the beings. Now, he didn't say he was abducted, but the beings were in the room, so you can assume that he was abducted, and his wife had the implants, and he was all upset and, angry that he didn't get permission and all that sort of stuff. I just remember one thing. If he had not been abducted, there would be no disclosure, because it was Jim Semivan. In 2016, I wrote about it at the time. I was told Jim Semivan was called the big man in Washington, and Jim Semivan had told Chris Bledsoe, high-level people are going to go public. They're going to say UFOs exist, and we're going to push this thing out. And Jim Semivan has now confirmed that he went to all the heads of the three-letter agencies and said, "You guys can't get this out. You guys haven't been able to disclose this. We're going to drop this thing. We're not going to release classified material, but we're going to drop it." Just remember, if Jim Semivan had not been abducted, that never would have happened. There would be no disclosure today if it hadn't. So they got Jim Semivan. They're taking certain people that they want certain stories put out. But back to this question about need to know and believing that people are just pawns and they know better and so stuff. What you got to remember that people forget, another thing is that they have come forward, that Lockheed Skunk Works. Part of the story people forget is Tom DeLonge in 2015. Everybody says Tom DeLonge put these people together. No, I have a book. I don't know if I'll release it. It's finished, but I don't know if I'm going to release it. And it tells how Tom DeLonge actually did it. Tom DeLonge got an invite to go to Lockheed Skunk Works to a barbecue in the parking lot at Lockheed Skunk Works. And they said, they knew he was into UFOs. And they said, "Hey, would you like to introduce the president of Lockheed Skunk Works at this?" Like, what's this about? They set him up. And so he went there and he said, "Yeah, I'll go as long as I can have 5 minutes with the guy." Then they take him to a skiff. They take him to Area 51 and he's on the skiff. And they basically tell him, they ask him, "We just want to know how's it work? How do they fly?" And then the head scientist is saying, "How do they fly? That's all I want to know. How do they fly?" And he's in a skiff with Robert Weiss, the head of Lockheed Skunk Works. And they're telling him all this stuff. And then he said, "I think consciousness is involved." And he said, the head scientist, he said, "Now you're talking." And all he wanted to talk about for 45 minutes was consciousness. And they sent him to these intelligence guys at Pentagon City. Then they sent him to the National Aeronautics Space Administration. Then they sent him to Ames. And he was sent from place to place. That was all set up. And so you see that Lockheed was actually leaking this material in 2015. They wanted it out, but they wanted it sort of out, not completely out. They wanted it out because they can't figure it out. They wanted the white world to help. So they're going to move it out the back door and move it back in the front door with funding, and people are going to help them figure this thing out. And if you take a look at how this whole thing happened in 2000, I point out in a number of the writings I've done that in January of 2016, there was a meeting, Podesta, because this was going to be dropped by Hillary Clinton.
Yeah.
She lost the election and they had to redo the thing. They had to start over again.
Oh yeah. Stephen Bassett had like even it all printed out. Yeah.
Yeah. They were going to do it from 2017 to 2025. They had to redo it. Now it's 2024 to 2030. It was the same thing. It was a 7-year program. They were going to disclose this thing. And because Hillary lost the election, they had to redo it. I remember talking to Chris Bledsoe. I said, okay, is this thing off? Is this drop? They're not going to drop it anymore because Hillary lost the election. He said, no, they're still going to drop it. It's go. But at the end of 2015, what you see is Hillary was going to do the interview. If you see the Podesta emails that leaked, Hillary is going to do the interview with Kimmel, and she had the question. They were supposed to ask her the question about UFOs, and that's when she was going to say, "Oh, there's a new nomenclature. They're no longer called UFOs; they're called UAPs." And he didn't ask her the question, and she got all upset in the email. She was all upset for 5 minutes. I worked on this, answering this question, working on how to answer this question, and she didn't ask me. He asked her in 2016. That's when she said, "Oh, I'm going to disclose. I'm going to go to Area 51. The new nomenclature is UAP." They were going to drop this thing, and in January of 2016. There was a meeting that took place on the internet, and the people that attended were Robert Weiss from Lockheed Skunk Works, McCaslin from Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, where they had the bodies in the craft, McKay, who ran Space Command, Tom DeLonge, and Podesta. And they had a meeting on UFO disclosure. So people say, oh, they're covering up, but they're not completely covering up because Lockheed Skunk Works was in that meeting. And it was a disclosure meeting about how they were going to drop this thing. And it didn't drop because that Hillary lost the election. And because all these high-level guys, McKay, Weiss, and McCaslin, were outed in the WikiLeaks emails, they all disappeared. I call them the three kings. They just disappeared, and then they brought in Elizondo and Justice and like the B team. These guys had to disappear because they'd been exposed. They were doing it, and McCaslin actually writes an email where he tells email for the president how to do the disclosure. This is 2015. This is all planned that they were going to release this thing. So the idea that they were going to fully hold the thing back. They were releasing material to DeLonge. This is all leaked, and they leaked stuff to Bill Moore and stuff, but they leak it enough so that you can't get to the bottom of it, that you can't confirm it. But the stuff, what they're doing is acclimatizing people. So what would happen is the same as what happened in 2017. You acclimatize the people, you get them ready, you put all this stuff in fictional movies, like Close Encounters of the Third Kind is the Holloman Air Force Base film. I remember telling Bob Emmett, hey, Bob, Holloman Air Force Base, that film, if it weren't for the location and the time of day, that's Close Encounters of the Third Kind. And he said, oh, I didn't tell you? I said, no, you didn't tell me what? I didn't tell you I gave a copy to Steven Spielberg? I said, no, you didn't tell me you gave a copy to Steven Spielberg. And he said, well, yeah, his sister, Annie Spielberg, was a line producer for us. And she worked for me. And that's where the Close Encounters. So they put this stuff in. And then comes 2017, and the New York Times goes public and says, yeah, the UFOs, they're doing UFOs. It's real. The government's investigating. And everybody goes, yeah, I knew that already. Because it had been in movies. They acclimatizing. And that's what they're doing now. They're doing the body, the crafts. They're acclimatizing us. So when it comes out, everybody's going to go, yeah, I knew that. Just tell me something new. And the question is, do we have the right to know? That's what I'm starting to say. That Walker's argument, this thing was, you do not have a right to know. Same as Hynek said to the head of his friend was Nixon's Secretary of Defense. He said to him, I think I've been in the UFO program long enough. I have a need to know. And the guy stood up and across the desk and pointed at him and said, you do not have a need to know. And he sat down. And that's the whole thing. That's what Walker said to us. He said, why should we change? And I would ask everybody on the panel, why should we change the rules and regulations to satisfy your curiosity? Admit it. Right. You're just curious. And it's I call it the 7, 8. If you take a look, a two-year-old child has an attention span between 4 and 6 minutes. A person on the internet, look it up, has the attention span of 8.25 seconds. So it's like disclosure. That's pretty cool. Okay, flip, next. And it's goes, you know what it's like on Twitter. It just goes, after an hour, nobody's reading anything you put on Twitter. And that's what they're doing. And Walker said, why should we change the rules and regulations to satisfy your curiosity? And then he said another one that I asked the panel is, okay, so when you figure it out, you're chasing the car, you're the dog chasing the car. When you finally catch the car, what are you going to do? What are you going to do with it when you finally get it? And everybody goes, I don't know. And that's what they're saying. You don't have any need to know because you're not going to do anything with it. You can't do anything. You just want to be curious. You just want to know to put it on Twitter or to do a podcast on it. And that's why they're saying you don't have a need to know. And it all comes down. It's the security clearance plus the need to know, that if you don't have a need to know, and if you got an $885 billion defense budget, that's a lot of fear. That's a lot of people who got a lot of big guns and more guns. We need more guns and we're fear. And these guys are everybody's enemy. And that's why you have these levels of security. Let's get it deeper into security, more secure. And now
more money.
Right now, they're building bunkers to put the security stuff in. They're trying to deep it because it's starting to expose, and they have new levels of security because it's all based on fear. It's based upon, you know.
Well, they also don't want to get castigated after 75 to 80 years of denial.
But I would say that their backup is going to be that they were told to do it. And I basically maintain I think they're getting a bad rap. They were told to do this. They were contracted. And it's like the idea where, you're the president's lawyer and you get thrown under the bus when things go bad. That's what's happening here. They're getting thrown under the bus. And that's why I bring up the fact that in 2015, they're the ones that leaked it to Tom DeLonge. And Tom DeLonge was behind this disclosure. If it had not been for Tom DeLonge, there would be no disclosure. He's the guy that started this whole thing. He just didn't fall out of a tree.
Right. Okay. Well, we got a question from Nancy, Rob, and from Nicole. So I'm going to address ladies first. Rob, I'll get to you. I saw your message.
Well,
Nancy,
actually, my question's irrelevant right now. So it's already been like 10 minutes past. So.
Okay, it's been really hard to get to questions from everybody.
I'll try to be shorter. I'll try to be shorter so you can get to more questions.
Oh, can I ask something about the curiosity?
Sure.
So you believe that the experiencers that were, I'm telling you, this is life altering. Like my course of life was completely changed by an encounter I had. I don't think it's curiosity. I think, like you said before, the experiencers hold the answers. I think the experiencer disclosure is us and happening. And like, what do you do when you find the answer? I think that we find it. I don't think it's already there. So I guess. So do you think that? Do you think that, Grant, that is curiosity? Like, that for our right to know, because I feel like this is my life.
Okay, but
just,
the difference is that there was a channeling done with Martin Luther where they asked him, why does God not present himself? And I posted it and I said, this is exactly the reason why aliens don't present themselves. They're not Santa Claus. They're not here to give us stuff. And they make you curious. Exactly what they do. Curiosity is the bottom line of science. Unless you're curious, you're not going to do anything. You're not going to do any investigation. So what they do, the aliens are doing that, whoever they are. I call it the intelligence behind the phenomena. They're doing exactly the same thing. They're making you curious, but they're not giving you any answers. They're dragging you along. Because what we do is, the way we're going to do is we land on another planet. We say, we're here to bring you freedom, democracy, Jesus, and McDonald's. And then they point the guns and say, get the hell out of here. Like, who do you think you are? That's what we do. We want to do the missionary thing. They're not. They're getting you to figure it out. So they're making you curious. And you're the one that's carrying the messages. So you're carrying the message and everybody says, like, what's happening to these experiences? What are they saying? And stuff like that. And everybody starts to dig. And the more we go, but I say there's going to be no disclosure answer, no final answer. It's like we make this assumption that there's only one piece that we're going to get this all thing together. Like in 1874, the prime example is Max Planck, who invented quantum physics, revolutionized the universe with quantum physics. His professor was Professor Joly, 1874, said, Max, don't go into physics. We got it all figured out. There's nothing to do. And that's what we have the idea. It's like, there's one piece. The government's got it. They got the crafts. They're flying them around. We just figure out this one piece. I say, I guarantee you, there's going to be levels and levels and levels. The government doesn't know. There is going to be no final answer. It's almost like the idea that we assume that we got things figured out. So you take like a very simple thing, an amoeba, one single cell amoeba. And we say, oh, we understand that it produces whatever. You take a look and you look at, get in more detail, you realize that in order for that amoeba to form, there are 12 quadrillion atoms. That's 12 with 18 zeros after it, atoms that form that amoeba. They all come in at the right place. They come from who knows where, and they all come in, these atoms, and they all go into three-dimensional spots at the right time in the right place. And the amoeba has up to 670 billion base pairs. In the human body, you only have 3 billion base pairs, 670 billion base pairs. And these atoms all go in the right dimension to get 670 billion base pairs absolutely in order with no mistakes. And we say, oh, it's just happening. Baloney, it's happening. And that's the thing, is the more you look at nature, the more complex it gets. The more you look at the UFO phenomenon, the more complex it gets. So I don't believe there's any real answer. There's going to be more of an answer than we got now, but it gets more complex, I say guarantee the UFO phenomenon is going to be at least 1,000 times more complex than what you think it is. And that's what Jim Semivan says. He says, there does not appear to be any there. People say we got to put the dots together. I'm not sure there's any dots to put together. That's indicating that this thing is way beyond what we think. We just assume that we got this thing all figured out, and we put a name, and that's what we do. We name it. Oh, we say there's a craft with this, that. It's all one thing. It's alive, and it gets more complex, and you never get to see reality. That's the part of this thing about the holographic universe and this whole thing is Donald Hoffman has now this theory that everything you see is a desktop icon. You cannot see reality. You can get closer to reality. You keep going, but everything you look at is composed inside your head. There is, as John Wheeler said, there is no out there. This is the intellectual successor to Einstein at Princeton. He said there is no out there. It's a participatory universe. It's happening inside your head. And he said, I would not be surprised if the entire universe turned out to be a figment of the imagination. And when you hear guys like that saying that, or Seth, the first channeler, said, and I believe this is the bottom line, I think the first channeler in the New Age said, you manifest everything around you. There is no other rule. That's how complex this thing's going to get. We don't understand that already. We don't believe it because the illusion is so very strong that this is solid. We know the table's not solid. It looks like it's solid. And these sort of things. So we're gradually realizing the world is not the way we think it is. And that's why I call it the theory of wow. What the phenomenon is doing, it's not doing anything. It just wants you to go, wow. It's like, what the heck happened to me? I just can't get out of my head. I mean, I can't believe what happened. And that's what they're doing. They're making you go, wow. And everybody's going, wow, what's going on here? And everybody starts to explore and everybody starts to do research and stuff like that. And that's what they're doing. They're dragging you down with these breadcrumbs as people explore and we learn more and more and more. But it's not about learning that they're from some planet and they're here to do something. I don't think they're here to do anything. That's why they're doing weird things. Why do the UFOs have lights on them? They have lights on them so you can see them. It's almost like a thing in a foreign. If they're aliens, it's like we got this planet and they've got the atomic bomb and they could destroy themselves. We got to get a message to them. What should we do? The grade 1 classes, hey, well, let's fly around crafts with lights. And then the one says, let's mutilate cattle downwind and downstream from nuclear power activities. And then the one says, let's do crop circles. And every single paranormal phenomenon, not just UFO, every single paranormal phenomenon, you learn more and more and it gets more complex and you don't learn anything. What paranormal phenomena have we ever had that we had a final explanation? It just gets more and more complex as we go on. Nature gets more and more complex as we go along.
Nothing has really got an answer to it. I mean,
exactly.
we're all still speculating and looking for truth, but the search goes on. Let's go around the panel and take final comments, starting with Rob.
I actually have no final comment. I was just actually listening to everything, so I'll pass on this one.
Okay, then we'll go to Odessa. Odessa, you're muted.
You're absolutely right. I was. My keyboard is very loud when I type, so I had to mute myself. I think that the general consensus is just that we've all got a lot of questions about a lot of things. We covered a lot of ground tonight, so it was very hard to keep up. I just want to say a lot of people in our chat are very excited to have Grant here tonight, and they're very excited about our new co-host, Nicole. And I just wanted to throw out a thank you for being here from everyone in the chat room. So thank you so much for that.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, let's go to Nancy.
Well, I think everything is about frequency and consciousness. And I think we sort of create our own reality. So a lot of what you said, I know to be true. So it was very interesting. I enjoyed it.
Okay, we'll go to Nas.
Well, I hope you're able to stay in the back room for a couple of minutes afterwards, because I have a couple of pieces of information I'd like to drop on you.
Okay.
But more importantly, as a general thing here, I want to express my deep gratitude for you being here and sharing how far you've gotten in the process of unraveling the information. It's that movement beyond attachment to the concept of having an answer and then trying to find everything with that, but saying, no, let's see if it's beyond that. And that's what humanity has to do completely. That they have to be able to let go of the concept that they know and say those three magic words, I don't know. So
Yeah,
that they
the
can
human
start to learn.
construct. Yeah, we need to release ourselves from that. Yep. Okay, Nicole.
Okay. You know that I have thousands of questions, Grant, and I hope to actually connect with you after this, because I definitely with some things. So I just want to thank you so much for all the information that you shared with us. And even though we kind of differ on some things here and there, like that book before, if you don't publish it, I want to read it. I mean, I am dying for that information. So I have it connected from there on out. So I'm just saying, chat, you guys are awesome. I'm so glad to see so
Right?
many like over here. Yeah, this is like amazing.
They're
So
awesome.
yeah,
great.
everybody on the panel. I mean, Nancy, Nas, I mean, Robert, do you go by Rob though? I'm used to calling you Rob.
That's fine. Whatever.
That's
Whatever.
fine. Yeah. So, and Grant. So yeah, and obviously Tim. But I'm excited to be here. So
Yeah, I'm love for laughs.
No.
I get it.
right.
Anyways, outside of that, I want to ask you, Grant, where can people find you online?
Twitter. I do Twitter, Grant Cameron at Twitter. That's where I put the latest stuff that I'm doing. I can actually send the books. I've got 3 books that are finished, which I don't know if I'll publish. They've been edited and stuff, but I can provide that. It's all connected as my publishing. I help experiencers, or I encourage people like Nicole to put their story down and put it out for their children, grandchildren, or whatever, to document their story. Because once you do that, then you suddenly become a messiah, and you suddenly realize that this is important stuff. But I guess Twitter, I sort of post stuff. I don't really sort of engage. I used to have the presidential UFO website, but I'd like to make my final spiel that to me, it's all this one thing that I always remind people. The way I see it is, it's not so much UFOs, it's this nature of reality. And I'm big into near-death experience. I'm writing a book called Death on Death. I'm glad to see a panel of young people, because we always had this thing about the one New Jersey conference. I remember the one woman came to the guy and says, "Hey, do you have a senior discount?" And he said, "If you get a senior discount, everybody gets a discount." It's like now, since 2017, since this awakening, you got a lot of young people. So I'm glad that there's people to take over. What I'd always like to remind people is the bottom line is what are we, what's actually going on. And you got to realize that I believe that we come into the world to do something. We've all got a mission. When we leave, we're only going to get asked one question: how did it work out? Because you were the one that planned it, and everybody says they could have done better. So all I got to do is figure out why we came here, what we're supposed to be doing, and are we doing it? And the most important thing to remind people in the UFO field is people sort of get frustrated with they're not getting disclosure. You got to remember that this story is the Super Bowl of all stories. It's the biggest story of all times. And as I always point out, you could have been born an untouchable in the streets of Calcutta and spend your days in a junkyard searching for something valuable enough to sell for food for tomorrow. You didn't get that. You got to play in the Super Bowl. Not only did you get to go and watch the game, you're in the Super Bowl, you're on the field. You may be the water boy, the quarterback, whatever. You got to play in the Super Bowl. So take it with respect and do whatever you can to move the ball down the field. That's all it's about. I think that's what we're doing. We're here and we've been given some sort of mission, probably by ourselves, that we agreed to have these experiences. It's like the near-death experience. What's the chances that experiencers, that 37% of all near-death, 37% of all people who've been on board a ship have had a near-death experience? That's 2 random events. That's not coincidence. That indicates that we are planning this kind of stuff, that it's not accidental. We have a mission to do. Remember who you are, because as I said, when you leave your body and you're going to suddenly realize, who am I really? That's the bottom line of all mystical teaching, is remember who you actually are. You are not the puppet. Because you played King Henry VIII in grade 12 high school does not mean you're not King Henry VIII. You're a puppet. You're playing the puppet. You are the real person. You will float away. It will go, and it will go on to another stage. As Whitley Strieber's wife came back, Anne said, Whitley, I am no longer Anne, but I'll always be Anne to you. I'm moving on to a different stage. We are playing on a stage. Have fun, do what you can, move the ball down the field, and realize it's all just a play. And and in the next lifetime, it's going to be a forgotten play. So enjoy it. Do what you can to move the ball down the field.
Very, very well said. Thank you, Grant. I'm going to let everybody know the books that he has. Here we go. Contact Modalities, The Keys to the Universe. Charlie Red Star, True Reports of One of North America's Biggest UFO Sightings. Weird Paranormal Tales of Apports and Manifestations. Managing Magic, the Government UFO Disclosure Plan. Jimmy Carter, Paranormal and UFO Tales. Inspired, the Paranormal World of Creativity. Tuned In, the Paranormal World of Music. The Portals and UFOs of Mount Shasta. And the last 2 I found was the Canadian Government UFO Story, the Wilbert Smith Files, and it looks like the original UFOs Area 51 and Government Informants book. So if you're interested in any of these books, they are available on Amazon. Some of them are also available on Kindle. So please check them out. Get yourself a copy. Grant is filled with a lot of good information. And I want to thank everybody on the panel for being here tonight. I'm sorry we couldn't get to all of your questions as well.
I have one thing I really need to say. We have a brand new co-host, and we have not spent enough time welcoming her or getting to know her. So we're going to need a little bit more from her next time.
Yes, I'm sorry, Nicole. We will get more from you next time. But Grant, thank you for all your information. Also want to thank everybody who participated online and everybody who participated in the chat room. I know a lot of people came over to see Nicole this evening. So thank you very much for being here. We will see you next week. Next week we have, if I'm correct, Augie Nost. Very interesting fellow. So please come. It'll be on Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern. So from all of us, Merry Christmas or Happy Holidays.
Merry Christmas.
And
all the holidays.
Right. And we will see you next week.
Thank you, Renee.